Well, here we are, talking about episode 2 of season 3 of Picard. And let me tell you folks, I thought it was kind of a mixed bag, even though it was an improvement over the first episode. I know that's kind of a contradictory statement, but we'll get into that once I actually start getting into the review. There's some observations that I made that didn't make it into my episode 1 review, so I'm going to start off by going and talking about those first. Now, as we all pretty much know, Star Trek as a franchise is dead. Well, that's a big no duh. However, it seems that the showrunner, Terry Metallicus, is trying to Frankenstein it back to life using familiar Star Trek. Largely, it feels like the seasons could be TNG's version of Wrath of Khan, mixed in a little bit of the episode Conspiracy from season 1 of TNG. And I think that Frankenstein is the perfect analogy that sums up the current state of Star Trek. They've taken its desiccated corpse and skinned it with some beloved and familiar moments of the franchise, and then powered it with the nuclear sewage that is Kurtzman Trek. Seriously, fuck that guy. Meanwhile, you have Metallicus in the background dressed as a mad scientist screaming, "It's alive!" Well, kind of. And sadly, the end result is a shambling corpse of a franchise that is wandering around and occasionally does something kind of Star Trek-y. In this episode, the A-plot primarily focuses on Picard and the Titan and the Crushers, while the B-plot focuses again on Raffi. And unfortunately, the reason why I say this episode is a mixed bag is because we get a lot more Raffi in it. And it's not great. And the A-plot, I would say, is actually pretty good. And it feels the closest to Star Trek I've seen out of anything in the last couple of years. This episode begins with a flashback with Jack on board the Alias trying to make a deal with the Fenris Rangers, and we basically find out that he's an outlaw, and that somebody is looking for him. Meanwhile, back in the present, Picard and Riker are attempting to save Jack and Dr. Crusher. Unfortunately, the mysterious vessel goes and disables the ship and destroys the shuttle. It also takes out the life support on the stasis pod that Dr. Crusher's in. Picard, who's actually quick thinking in this instance, sets up some devices to prevent them from being transported off, which just so happens that they go and target Jack. But they are able to go and enable the devices and prevent him from being transported off. Back on the Titan, 7 of 9 tries to convince Captain Shaw to go and intervene and rescue Picard and Riker and whoever else is on the ship. Shaw knows that they are outgunned by the mysterious vessel, stating that they are an exploration craft and that he's not willing to risk the 500 souls aboard the Titan. However, 7-9 convinces him to intervene by appealing to his sense of legacy. She says to him he could be the hero who saved heroes, or the captain that let legends die. Back on the Alias, the mystery ship goes and ensnares it in a tractor beam. However, the Titan comes in to its rescue, warping in, breaking the tractor beam. I'll be honest with you folks, it's kind of cool and goofy at the same time. I mean, visually, it looks cool. But in reality, I'm pretty sure that wouldn't work. Anyway, the Titan comes to the rescue and everybody gets beamed off. Once safely on board, it is discovered that Jack Crusher is actually a wanted criminal. And Beverly Crusher is transported to the medical bay to undergo surgery to fix the injuries from the previous episode. Bannock, who is the captain of the mystery vessel known as the Shrike, hails the Titan and asks Captain Shaw to turn over Jack Crusher because they are bounty hunters and he is wanted in several systems with a substantial bounty on his head. I'm pretty sure that this is a bullshit cover story because why would a group of bounty hunters have such a powerful ship? That doesn't make any sense. But I'm pretty sure that the explanation will unfold throughout the season. At least it better be. Shaw responds that the Federation does not negotiate with bounty hunters, where she offers to go and lower the shields of her ship so that they can go and scan her armaments. And let me tell you folks, she's packing a serious hand cannon. Knowing that the Titan is severely undergunned, she gives them an hour to make the decision to go and hand over Jack Crusher. And to let the crew of the Titan know that she's serious, she uses her tractor beam to fling the Alias into the Titan, causing severe damage to the saucer section. Now, we do enter into a bit of a TNG moral dilemma here. Shaw is more inclined to hand him over to the bounty hunters, that way they could be on their merry way. However, Riker protests, stating that if they hand over Jack, they are sending him to his doom. Now, one of the best scenes of the episode takes place 15 minutes before the hour is up. Bannock hails the Titan. and explains to them the name of the ship, which is the Shrike, which is a carrion bird from Earth, and it's also known as the Butcher Bird because it goes and it pecks its prey apart piece by piece.
I will take another piece of you.
I'll peck, and I'll jab. Everything that makes you, you.
Every system that makes you ship your ship.
Until there's nothing left but the choice to have given me what you could have given me now.
It's actually a clever bit of intimidation on the part of Vadic. The scene is really well executed and it raises the stakes of the situation. Jack, not willing to risk the life of his mother, tricks the guard and escapes the brig, with the intent of going and turning himself into Vadic. However, he is intercepted by 7 of 9, who prevents him from transporting over. But before time is up, Riker heads to the medbay to go and revive Dr. Crusher and take her to the bridge. And there is another fantastic moment in this episode. There is a silent exchange between Beverly and Picard. Where he comes to the realization that Jack is indeed his son. With this information being revealed, Shaw realizes that he can't go and hand over Jack, and decides that instead that they're gonna go and try and run. Now it's time to talk about the B-plot of the story, which is very Raffi-centric and quite frankly not as interesting, so I'm gonna go and sum it up. Raffi is told by her contact to stop investigating the terrorist attack on the Federation building. She's told that if she doesn't let it go, she'll simply become another casualty, and it comes off as a bit of a threat. However, Raffi is not willing to let it go, so she goes and contacts her ex-husband, who is still connected to the underworld, where she gets a lead on a Ferengi named Sneed. She then goes and attempts to contact Sneed, and things really kind of go to hell from there. To prove to Sneed that she is not working for the Federation, she is given a narcotic which she is forced to take. This way she can go and maintain her cover. However, Sneed knows that she is working for the Federation and attempts to kill her. And that's when Worf shows up. Holy shit, this scene is really badass as Worf opens up a can of whoop-ass. It turns out Worf is actually her handler, and that he wasn't threatening her, but instead warning her that if she went any further, that she would get herself killed, which is the reason why he showed up to save her. And that's pretty much it. Overall, I have to say, I actually really enjoyed this episode. It was an entertaining bit of television. However, it's still not Star Trek, but it did have Star Trek moments. Sadly, I think that's the best we're going to be getting. One of my favorite bits is the moral dilemma on whether to hand over Jack Crusher to the bounty hunters or not. It was really well executed, and it did feel like an episode of TNG. The conflict between Shaw and Picard does feel genuine and not arbitrary. Shaw wants to hand over Jack Crusher because he's not willing to sacrifice the lives of his crew for a mere criminal. In a lot of ways, it closely mirrors the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few from Wrath of Khan, but without coming out and directly parroting it. Picard, on the other hand, doesn't want to hand Jack over to the bounty hunters, instead wanting to turn him in so he can face justice for his crimes. Now, there's also a part of Picard, whether he wants to admit to himself or not, that Jack Crusher is indeed his son, and that handing him over would be a death sentence. Both men are correct in their positions, and it really comes down to your outlook on life, on who you decide to side with. It's actually really well done. And ultimately, Shaw has a change of heart once he finds out that Jack Crusher is Picard's son. Shaw is not a bad guy, he's just trying to protect the lives of his crew. That being 500 people is a huge responsibility, and it's something that he doesn't take lightly. On top of that, he's very much by the book, and he's not one for cowboy diplomacy, which adds a really nice element of conflict between these two characters. Also, Patrick Stewart feels a lot more like Picard in this episode. He is very authoritative and takes charge when he needs to. And he doesn't feel as much like a doddering old man apologizing for his mere existence. It's a miracle. And it only took 3 seasons. Amanda Plummer as Vadic is actually pretty fantastic. And it doesn't come off as your typical Kurt, your girl boss bullshit. I like to think of the character as the grandma with the 44 Magnum in her purse. Sure, she's not physically threatening or imposing, and she could probably be knocked over by a stiff breeze. But when she whips out that hand cannon and starts screaming, "Eat lead, motherfuckers," you better start diving for cover. She's arrogant and kooky and knows that she's holding all the cards. The Titan is no match for the Shrike, and she gets a sick pleasure out of toying with Shaw and Picard, and it's downright vicious and imposing. And it's really well executed. One of my complaints with modern storytelling is that we don't feel the stakes in the story, which is the opposite here. Now, let's talk about the things that are not so good. Now, a lot of the issues I have with this episode are the same things I had with episode 1, so largely I'm gonna be repeating myself a bit. Like the fact that apparently all the light switches in the future are broken, which leaves everything feeling just dark and moody. Now, one thing is I know that the budget for season 3 has been slashed quite a bit, and this could be used to hide some really poor special effects. Another one of my complaints that I noticed in episode 1 is that the Titan is supposed to have a crew of 500 people, but the bridge really looks empty. Now, depending on the episode of TNG, it felt like the Enterprise had at least 8 people on the bridge at all times, maybe more than that. Where the Titan, it seems like it has half that. Hell, even Brave New World, the bridge feels like it's more populated and better lit. Now, I previously mentioned this several times. This episode has way too much Raffi in it. She still comes off as being whiny and annoying, and quite frankly, I think she's the Wesley Crusher of the series. Unfortunately, she's very closely tied to the B-plot, so I'm pretty sure we're going to be seeing more of her throughout the season. She'll probably be tied to Worf, which means that this is going to be a double-edged sword. Now let's talk about the things that are downright unforgivable. The show is not family friendly. And like I said in my previous review, when I first started watching Star Trek, I was 4 years old, and this is not something you'd want to show a 4-year-old. Everything has to be dark, edgy, and adult. Though it's been vastly toned down, it's still present. Also in this episode, there are callbacks to poor decisions from the previous season, like Vadic pointing out that Picard is an android.
Oh, Admiral Jean-Luc Picard. In the synthetic flesh.
I don't know why, but that's something in my opinion that should be casually ignored. Now, this one I have mixed feelings on, and I mentioned it previously with the Titan jumping in and breaking the tractor beam on hold of the other ship. Yes, it's kind of like the Holdo maneuver. I really like this and hate it at the same time. I mean, it looks fucking cool, but it's not very Trek, and I'm not sure if it's feasible with that tractor beam technology. It just seems that it would have locked onto the Titan instead. Yes, I know I can hold contradictory opinions on something. Now, I want to talk about whether this is too little too late. The reaction from my audience around my episode 1 review has been rather interesting to say the least, but honestly not unexpected. Some of you like the episode, seeing it as an improvement despite the flaws. Some of you hate it because it's not real Star Trek, and quite frankly, I can't hold that against you, because it's not. And there are several of you who view watching season 3 akin to a battered wife returning to her abuser, expecting things will be different this time. And quite frankly, I don't blame you either. The current state of entertainment has made us cynical and jaded. It's hard for us to get excited for anything that remotely feels like a course correction because of the years of abuse that we've had at the hands of our favorite franchises. The larger problem is it's taking us years to get here, and it's going to take us years to dig ourselves out of this. Culture does not just shift overnight. Nothing short of Alex Kurtzman and the bad reboot crew being blacklisted from Hollywood for the damage they've caused over the years would make me happy. But at the end of the day, it's not going to change anything. Maybe it might save a franchise from further destruction. Is there anything left at this point? But the other thing that we need to do is that when they actually do something right, we need to make sure that we highlight that as well, because we can't just shit on everything, even if it's not perfect, because it gives them no incentive to change. And honestly, I went into this not giving a fuck about Star Trek anymore. And quite frankly, I've been pleasantly surprised. Yes, it's not Star Trek, but it is an improvement. I think this comment that Brandon Morris left on my episode 1 review really kind of sums up the point I'm trying to get across. He says, "I'm a huge fan of the philosophy that you acknowledge when good has been done instead of just crapping on everything. When you train a dog, you don't just tell them when they're bad, you let them know when they're doing good, so they have a direction to go to in the future. And it's the same for Hollywood, because that's basically what Hollywood is. It's an untrained dog shitting on our carpet, which is entertainment. Anyway, folks, that's all I got for tonight. If you enjoyed this video, go and check out my episode 1 review of season 3 of Picard. You might like it, or you might hate it. Just let me know, leave a comment. I'll catch you next time. Like the thing already.